Today, we will talk about a catastrophic event in aviation history. This shocking incident occurred in 2014 when a Boeing 777 aircraft departed from Kuala Lumpur. After flying for 39 minutes, the aircraft suddenly lost contact with the control tower. Following the loss of contact, the aircraft made a series of bizarre maneuvers, including a turn of over 300 degrees at high altitude, before disappearing into the vast ocean. Afterwards, 27 countries participated in the search effort, but nothing was found. The aircraft bears a name that countless people cannot forget. Why hasn't MH370 been found to this day? What exactly happened aboard MH370 remains a subject of much speculation, with no reasonable explanation yet. Now, let's travel back to 2014 and review the events leading up to this incident. In the early hours of March 2014, a flight from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, bound for Beijing, China, had completed boarding and was awaiting clearance for takeoff on the runway. The flight was scheduled to depart from Kuala Lumpur International Airport and arrive at Beijing International Airport at 7:30 a.m. local time, with a total flight time of 5 hours and 34 minutes. The aircraft was Boeing 777, carrying a total of 227 passengers, including 154 Chinese nationals, along with 12 crew members, including 2 pilots. The captain, Zahari, age 53, had accumulated 18,365 hours of flight experience and was highly trained. The first officer, Hamid, age 27, had 2,763 hours of flight experience and had an excellent record. Of course, in addition to the 239 people on board, the aircraft also carried 30,000 pounds of cargo. Captain Zahari communicated with air traffic control. At precisely 12:42 a.m., the aircraft took off from runway 32 and was cleared by air traffic control to climb to an altitude of 18,000 feet. Shortly after takeoff at 12:46 a.m., air traffic control instructed the aircraft to maintain an altitude of 35,000 feet. These procedures were all standard, much like putting on shoes before leaving the house. Everything was normal and routine. The MH370 proceeded toward Beijing as usual. The passengers on board the plane were still hopeful of seeing a beautiful sunrise upon reaching Beijing. However, their hopes were dashed as their aircraft encountered trouble. After flying normally for 37 minutes, just as the aircraft was about to enter Vietnamese airspace, Captain Zahari made a final communication with Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control. Because the aircraft was about to enter Vietnamese airspace, the tower in Kuala Lumpur also recorded the conversation at that time.
370, maintaining level 350.
Malaysian 370.
Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350.
Malaysian 370. Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
At 1:20 a.m. on March 4, 2014, Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control could still observe MH370 progressing normally on radar. However, at 1:21 a.m., MH370's signal suddenly disappeared from Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control's radar. Simultaneously, the airplane's signal also vanished from Ho Chi Minh City's Air Traffic Control radar. At this moment, the airplane was supposed to be transitioning to Ho Chi Minh City's Air Traffic Control Center, but it vanished abruptly. This was highly irregular, prompting the immediate activation of auxiliary radars by the control center to capture MH370 signal. The auxiliary radar operates based on transponders installed on each aircraft. When the auxiliary radar sends information to the transponder responds by reporting flight data and destination information. However, after 1:21 a.m., even the transponder on board the aircraft ceased functioning. The last data transmitted to control center from the aircraft indicated an altitude of 35,000 feet, a normal cruising speed of 471 knots, and remaining fuel of 90,000 pounds, which calculated to provide over 6 hours of flight time. With radio and transponder signal lost, military radar was used to track MH370's movements. Military radar detected after going off course. MH370 initially turned right, then abruptly left, executing a turn of over 300 degrees. It then flew southwestward, turned right again near Penang Island, and subsequently flew straight until disappearing from radar coverage. Malaysian Air Force military radar data also indicated that after losing contact, the aircraft rapidly ascended to an altitude of 58,000 feet, far exceeding its operational limits. After reaching approximately 43,000 feet, the aircraft quickly descended to 4,800 feet, flying northwestward over the Malay Peninsula, crossing over the Pulau Perak Island, before disappearing from Malaysian military radar. Prior to this, around 1:30 a.m. on March 8, 2014, several witnesses reported seeing an aircraft flying at low altitude. The local police at Kota Baru received 4 relevant reports. Shortly after MH370 lost contact, Malaysia launched search and rescue operations in Southeast Asia. The Kuala Lumpur Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Center initiated a search operation within hours of the plane's disappearance. Initially, the search was focused on where the aircraft disappeared, near the Gulf of Thailand and South China Sea. Beginning with aerial search operations, however, no traces of MH370 was found. On March 12, the chief of the Royal Malaysian Air Force announced that an unidentified aircraft crossed the Malay Peninsula and was last seen on military radar northwest of Pintan Island, 370 kilometers away. It then turned right and flew northwest until disappearing from the radar screen. Subsequently, in the following days, the search area expanded to include the Strait of Malacca, the Andaman Sea, and the Bay of Bengal. Many countries dispatched airborne search teams for rescue efforts, but the plane was still not found. When MH370 disappeared, there was still enough fuel on board for 6 hours of flight, which corresponded to a vast search area. Searching aimlessly in a vast ocean is like searching for a needle in a haystack. However, the search efforts were urgent. As everyone knows, the first priority when an aircraft goes down is to locate a black box. This device records flight data and cockpit voice recordings, capturing 30 minutes of cockpit communication before the aircraft stops working or crashes, as well as various flight data 2 hours before the incident. Finding the black box was relatively easier if the plane crashed on land. However, when it plunges into the ocean, it becomes much more challenging. Although MH370's black box was equipped with a beacon, its signal only lasts for 30 days. Missing this 30-day window will make finding the black box much more difficult. Therefore, the search and rescue team reanalyzed possible whereabouts of the aircraft to conduct precise searches. Although wireless communication and transponders on the aircraft have failed, each aircraft is equipped with a satellite communication system, albeit its operation is complex. The satellite communication system on board the aircraft sends signal to satellites, which then relay the signal back to the ground, while the International Maritime Satellite Organization cannot directly provide information on the flight path. It can calculate the distance between the aircraft and the satellite, as well as the flight direction and speed, based on signal transmission. Upon reviewing the records of the International Maritime Satellite Communication System, the Search and Rescue Department discovered that MH370's satellite communication system was either shut down or malfunctioned at 1:21 a.m. on March 8, 2014, when the aircraft disappeared from radar. 3 minutes later, it reconnected over the Andaman Sea, and the signal remained stable until 6 hours later when the fuel was exhausted, and that's when the signal was lost again. According to the principle of satellite communication system operation, when connected, the aircraft will perform a handshake communication with the satellite every hour. In the final stages of MH370, a total of 7 handshake communications were recorded between the satellite and MH370. Additionally, there were 2 attempted calls, but unfortunately the crew did not respond. Based on these 7 handshake communications, 7 circular orbits were formed. Further calculation based on the aircraft's fuel suggested that the aircraft likely crashed within the 7th orbit. Furthermore, based on the aircraft's flight direction, a curved area where the aircraft might have crashed could be recalculated, which was a segment of the southern Indian Ocean. As a result, the focus of the search shifted to this area of southern Indian Ocean, which fell under Australian jurisdiction. Australia led a search operation involving other countries from March 18th to March 28th, during which extensive searches were conducted near the southern Indian Ocean. However, whether through aerial or surface searches, no traces of the plane crash were found. Since the disappearance of MH370, more than 27 countries have been involved in the search efforts. Along with more than 60 ships and aircrafts also joined the search effort. Unfortunately, this unprecedented search effort was also declared a failure. As of now, MH370 has been missing for over 2 months. Authorities believe that continuing air and surface searches at this point will be futile, as clues to the plane crash might have already sunk to the ocean floor. Consequently, the search center decided to shift the focus to underwater search. In late June 2014, the underwater search for 370 finally commenced. The underwater search lasted for several years, covering an area of more than 120,000 square kilometers. Yet, yielded no results. On January 29, 2015, 10 months after MH370 went missing, Malaysia's Civil Aviation Authority, representing Malaysian government, officially confirmed the flight's crash, declaring all 239 people on board as deceased. Although it was understood that the likelihood of survival for those on board the plane after such a long disappearance was minimal, every family member still harbored a glimmer of hope, hoping that their loved ones were still alive. However, when the Malaysian authorities officially announced the tragedy, everyone was overwhelmed by endless grief. From the moment the plane went missing, for over 300 days and nights, they did not have one day of peace. Each day was spent either waiting for official updates or praying for their family members. On July 29, 2015, 16 months after the plane's disappearance, an unexpected lead emerged. During cleaning work on Reunion Island, someone discovered a piece of aircraft wreckage covered in shells, indicating prolonged immersion in water. Aviation expert identified the debris as part of a wing from a Boeing 777, the same model as MH370. Subsequent meticulous examination of the wing serial number and marking by Aviation Technology Center experts confirmed that the wreckage belonged to a MH370. Reunion Island, where the wing debris was found, was nearly 4,000 kilometers from the initial search area. Ocean wave modeling analysis corroborated this discovery with earlier conclusion of the aircraft's crash location. This belated clue confirmed that the plane might have crashed somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. Following the discovery of this clue, the authorities restarted the search efforts, led by Australia with participation of China and France. The underwater search took precedence, while efforts to salvage drifting debris were massively deployed across various islands in East Africa. Ultimately, 32 different fragments from the plane were found, including fragments from the headrest, landing gear, and wings. After careful study and analysis of these 32 fragments, 18 were determined to be possibly, very likely, or essentially from MH370. 3 were confirmed to be from MH370, while the remaining could not be confirmed, despite finding numerous fragments. The plane itself remained elusive, and these pieces failed to pinpoint its exact location due to ocean currents. On January 17, 2017, the transport ministers of Malaysia, Australia, and China jointly issued a statement declaring that despite the long search effort, no trace of MH370 has been found. According to the decision made at the trilateral ministerial meeting in July 2016, the search operation for MH370 was temporarily suspended. However, if new leads emerge, investigations will be reopened. Since the moment MH370 went missing, search efforts have persisted for nearly 3 years. The search for the Malaysia Airlines cost approximately $150 million, making it the most expensive search and rescue operation in aviation history. This tragedy also stands as the only commercial flight incident in history where the crash location has not been identified. On January 10, 2018, underwater search operations resumed, with Malaysian government partnering with the American private company Ocean Infinity for seabed exploration. This collaboration adopted a no-find, no-fee approach. Ocean Infinity conducted a 90-day underwater search from January 17th onward, using 8 underwater drones simultaneously, equipped with titanium and capable of diving to depths of 5,000 meters. Each drone had a battery life of 60 hours, making them ideal for such underwater searches. Every drone could cover an area of 12,000 square kilometers per day. Despite the company's confidence in finding the plane, they seemed to underestimate the vastness of the ocean. After several months of searching, the plane was still not found. On May 29, the company announced that the search operation had failed. In March 2019, the Malaysian government stated that it would consider restarting the search only if there were any credible leads or specific recommendations. 10 years have passed since the disappearance of the plane, during which every piece of news stirred countless hearts. Despite continuous search effort by China, Malaysia, and Australia, MH370 remains elusive. Various speculations have arisen regarding what happened to MH370, including conspiracy theories, suffocation theories, hijacking theories, extraterrestrial theories, and more. Due to time constraints, they will only discuss some of the mainstream speculations. The captain hijacking theory. After the MH370 incident, the Malaysian Special Investigative Team initially suspected Captain Zahari as the prime suspect. This suspicion arose from the satellite and radar data indicating a sharp turn of over 300 degrees and erratic altitude changes while crossing the Malay Peninsula. Although the aircraft had autopilot capabilities, these maneuvers exceeded its automation. Such actions suggested that an experienced pilot, with Captain Zahari being the most skilled on board, had executed these actions. FBI searches were conducted at Zahari's residence. Police discovered a flight simulator program at Zahari's house, which had a route resembling MH370's final trajectory, raising suspicion. However, an official explanation dismissed it as one of the many simulated routes, insufficient as criminal evidence. Zahari's family and friends attested to his amiability, financial stability, and family relationship, diminishing motives for such an action. Terrorist hijacking investigation. Authorities scrutinized all passengers and identified 2 with fake passports, raising suspicions of hijacking. There were speculations that the plane's remote control system could have been exploited by others to manipulate the aircraft's flight. However, subsequent investigation revealed the 2 passengers with fake passports were Iranians seeking asylum, not terrorists. Additionally, the 777 model lacked ground remote control capabilities, further negating this possibility. The investigation into the cargo revealed a large quantity of lithium batteries on board, posing a fire hazard. The fire's ignition could have stemmed from various causes such as lithium batteries or relay failures, components malfunction likely overpowering onboard firefighting equipment and compromising communication systems. As the fire escalated, Captain Zahari attempted an emergency landing, executing a sharp turn to head back towards the Malay Peninsula, known for its forests, offering potential landing sites. Radar data showed aircraft flying at low altitudes over the peninsula, indicating Zahari's search for suitable landing spot. With the fire intensifying, Zahari eventually aimed for a sea landing to no avail, resulting in the tragic end. However, some may question if the aircraft indeed caught fire, considering the aircraft's turnaround location, whether flying back to Kuala Lumpur Airport, heading northwest to the nearest airport in Thailand, or continuing in the original direction towards TSN Airport in Vietnam. The distances are all relatively close. Captain Zahari, an experienced pilot, would have been well aware of these options. So why would Captain Zahari still opt to fly toward the forest-dense Malay Peninsula? There are two possibilities. Firstly, Captain Zahari's familiarity with the Malay Peninsula, being born there, made him confident he would know of its rugged terrain and extensive forests, potentially providing suitable emergency landing sites. If emergency landing were needed, one's instinct is to seek familiar territory. The dense forest of the peninsula could slow the plane's glide, hence the low-altitude flight. Secondly, flying at low altitude over the Malay Peninsula would expose the flight path, providing search teams with clues for a prompt rescue operation. Perhaps, at the time, the fire was substantial but not yet out of control, confined to the aircraft's interior. However, as smoke filled the cockpit, Captain Zahari, sensing impending suffocation or loss of consciousness, set the aircraft on autopilot and headed toward the Indian Ocean. Steering away from land was to avoid potential harm to ground personnel in the event of fuel exhaustion or an explosion. Supported by data from the International Maritime Satellite Organization showing MH370 maintaining a steady straight path at a constant altitude, indicative of autopilot mode. However, speculation remains speculation, as officials have yet to provide the truth behind the incident. Perhaps the world will only learn what truly happened on board when the MH370's black box is found. Every life has its duration. We cannot predict what comes first, tomorrow or accident. As society progresses, modes of travel diversify. Yet, amidst the hustle and bustle, let us cherish life and those around us. Apart from life and death, everything else is trivial. Let us live in the present actively and calmly.